Chapter 19. I have to blink a few times to make sure I'm not seeing things. Squint at the screen even though it's all right in front of me. But it's true. Mom's sitting at the wooden desk with her tall, slender figure in her stiff gray business suit, and Dad's lying in one of the bunk beds, the one closest to the floor, still wearing his super bright pink and yellow Hawaiian shirt, fast asleep, and he's snoring loudly, as usual, because when Dad's out cold, he's out cold. But there's absolutely no denying it. Mom and Dad are really there. It's truly a miracle in every sense of the word. "Oh my God," I murmur. They're alive." "I know," Pete says. He and I can only stare at the screen. Now that I'm really paying attention, I see there's a corpse lying in the bunk bed right above Dad. Like him, it's tucked in with a white, flimsy-looking blanket, its waxy face gazing up at its enclave ceiling, its eyes closed forever. Goosebumps pop up on my skin all over my body. I swear every time I see one of those awful things, it's like I'm seeing one for the very first time. I turn my attention back to Mom and Dad. Mom's in the middle of sticking a forkful of what looks like macaroni and cheese into her mouth, a metal bowl full of the stuff in front of her on the desk. So she must have been the one who was just in the cafeteria and flung open all the cabinets and used the microwave. And she and Dad must have been the ones who turned on all the lights in the cafeteria, the halls outside it, and the reception area too. Suddenly, Dad's snoring stops and he leaps from the bed, casting aside the flimsy blanket as he does. "We have to save them! We have to save them!" he shouts over and over, his eyes bloodshot and bugging wide. He looks totally ragged, his shirt slightly torn and crinkled in places, his normally well-groomed sandy hair and mustache all spiky and unkempt. Sort of like Pete's. Mom gulps down her spoonful of macaroni and whips her head towards him. "Honey, calm down." Dad paces the room, his feet making loud thuds against the metal. "We have to. We just have to. What if they're alive? What if Sandy and Pete are somehow still alive and we've just been lying down here doing absolutely nothing when we could be out there searching and rescuing them, bringing them to safety?" I suddenly have the urge to shout, "We're alive, Mom and Dad! We're right here! We've managed to survive somehow too, and we're in the security room." But that would be pointless, obviously. A part of me wants to burst from this room and race past the cafeteria to the nap room, but I don't, and neither does Pete. For some reason, something's telling me not to. An odd gut feeling I can't quite put a finger on, and Pete must have it too. Plus, I think I'm still not quite over the incredible shock that Mom and Dad are also still alive in the first place. I'm honestly not sure I'd be able to move a single muscle right now even if I wanted to. "Honey, you know they can't be alive," Mom said in an even logical-sounding voice. "Every single living thing in this park is dead by now. They have to be. I mean, we're unbelievably lucky we knew about this lab in the first place and we were able to get here in time before we got nuked ourselves." "Huh? Mom and Dad knew about this crazy place beforehand? And its emergency protocol? But how? Did they work here before or something?" Dad's still pacing. He doesn't let up. "Yeah, I know, but I still just can't figure out how the local authorities were alerted. I mean, the only thing I can think of is a malfunction or something, because nobody else knows the facility entrance password other than the rest of the lab scientists, and well, they're all dead, of course. Plus, when we arrived, there was no evidence anyone else is or had been down here recently. It just doesn't make any sense." Pete and I exchanged glances, his forehead all crinkled. It must be true. Mom and Dad must have been a couple of the scientists who worked down here all those years ago, at least at some point anyway. We plaster our gazes back to the nap room monitor. Dad finally stops pacing and stares hard at Mom. "Our beloved daughter and son are probably dead," he grinds out in a guttural voice I've never heard him use before. "And you're trying to figure out how the local authorities were alerted by the lab's stupid emergency alarm system? What in God's name is wrong with you, Linda?" Yikes. Though I have to admit he does have a good point. Mom doesn't look the tiniest bit devastated or upset that Pete and I are supposedly dead, and it makes my insides both quiver horribly and threaten to shrivel up. What is wrong with her? How could she not care? Mom lowers her fork into the metal bowl. "Nothing's wrong with me, David. I'm just very distraught about the loss of our children. Very, very distraught. I just deal with extremely emotional things differently than the average person. You know that." Well, that's also true. She's always so stoic, it's tough to tell what she's actually thinking or feeling. No, Dad says. This time is different. I can just tell. Well, then your instincts must be terribly off, David, because I'm heartbroken. Really. Just like you. But there's simply nothing we can do. We have to face reality and move on. Sandy and Pete are gone forever. Again, a part of me wants to bolt from the door, race to the nap room, and yell, "No, we're not! We're right here, Mom and Dad, right here!" But I still can't. I'm frozen, both physically and mentally, and I still can't fight that suspicious feeling needling through me that something's seriously off here. Something that's worth waiting around to see if it reveals itself. Dad sits down on the edge of his bunk bed, claps both his hands to his face, and sobs, and just keeps sobbing. Poor Dad. "We're right here, Dad. Pete and I are right here." When he finally starts to quiet down, Mom says, "There's also something I need to tell you, honey. Something I probably should have told you before, maybe even a long time ago." Dad removes his hands from his face, which is all red, splotchy, and gleaming with tears, but the rest of his facial features are rigid. "What is that?" "The reason I wanted to visit the park this summer was to sneak into the lab at one point, grab a sample of the emeraldites, and bring it to one of my FarmCore labs after the vacation." "Huh? What in God's name are you talking about? Why and how is that even possible?" "Yeah, that's what I'd like to know. The emeraldites were all destroyed 20 years ago when the lab breach happened. At least, they were supposed to be." Mom lets out a long, weary sigh, idly playing with her suit collar with one hand. "Well, you see, dear, the day before the, tragedy 20 years ago, I set aside a little sealed container of the emeraldites in the lab, in a secret place where I knew nobody would find them. That way, I could return around now and snag them. I figured after that amount of time, the lab would be long forgotten and off the government and local authorities' radar. Clearly, I was wrong about that, though." Dad's eyes harden as his forehead crinkles. Wait. What are you saying? Are you saying you planned this whole thing? That you—" Mom nods slowly. "Yes, honey. As you know, we were super close to finalizing Super E, and you know Stephen Phillips was going to take all the credit for it. That's what he does. And you also know I deserve most, if not all of the credit. Not just because I was the chief scientist, but because I was the one who practically did all the work down here." Whoa. Wait a minute. This must mean Mom is, or was, Dr. Sarah Kahn. She must have changed her name after the lab breach all those years ago. But why exactly? "Well, yeah," Dad says. "I agree you deserve most of the credit, but—" "So I was going to sneak out of the cabin while you and the kids were asleep one of these nights and snag the sample. Then, back home, I was going to make the finishing touches to the drug at one of my labs and finally release Super E to the world, under my company's name, of course." A brief silence wafts through the room, as well as the security room, the air of which feels staler than ever. "Oh, honey." Dad's eyes get all gleamy as they sink toward the ground. Then they seem to balloon out of their sockets as he whips them back up to Mom. "Wait a minute. Are you basically saying you triggered the emergency alarm system? That it wasn't due to an accidental lab breach after all, but that you purposefully set it off all those years ago?" Mom takes another deep breath, then nods again, her face as expressionless as ever. "Yes, it was me. I faked being sick that fateful day and triggered the alarm remotely from the cabin." "What? No, it can't be. Mom's a murderer?"